We're drowning in data, right? Every single click, every purchase, every little digital footprint, it all adds up to this massive, chaotic mountain of information. The real question is, how do organizations actually take all that noise and turn it into something clear, something valuable? What's the secret map they follow to get from raw data to a single game-changing decision? Okay, let's pull back the curtain on that.
Here's how we're going to tackle it. We'll kick things off with why getting into big data is such a huge deal in the first place. Then we'll dive into the 3 biggest roadblocks every project hits and how the cloud became the hero of the story. And after that, we'll walk through the entire analytics lifecycle, which is really just a step-by-step recipe for turning data into gold. First up, the Big Data Adoption Challenge. And look, this isn't just about buying some fancy new software. Deciding to really embrace big data is a massive strategic shift. It goes way, way beyond the buzzwords you hear all the time.
You know, when a company dives into big data, it really goes one of 2 ways. It can be transformative, which is a fancy way of saying it makes what you're already doing way more efficient. Think of it like a high-tech tune-up. Or it can be innovative, which means it completely changes the game, your products, your services, your entire business model. And that, well, that's a whole different level of commitment.
But before you can get to any of that cool stuff, you have to clear some pretty major hurdles. We're talking about the 3 big ones that can stop a project dead in its tracks: privacy, security, and something called provenance.
Now, those 3 are really just the tip of the iceberg. You've also got to worry about where you're even getting the data from, how your systems will perform under all that pressure, and who gets to make the rules. But for now, let's just zero in on those first 3, because honestly, if you don't get them right, nothing else matters.
First up, privacy. And this is a huge one. The second you start mixing different data sets together, you can accidentally stumble upon some incredibly sensitive personal information about people. If you get this wrong, you're not just looking at a fine, you're looking at a total collapse of trust with your customers.
And this image right here shows you exactly why this is so tricky. A database record by itself, kind of boring. A product review, harmless. A photo, no big deal. But when you use analytics to stitch them all together, suddenly you have this super detailed, maybe even invasive profile of a real person. That's the power, but it's also the peril.
Next up is security. And it's important to remember this is different from privacy. Security is all about keeping the bad guys out. It means having rock-solid authentication and authorization so you can control who sees what. And this gets even tougher when you realize that a lot of the popular tools used for big data, these NoSQL databases, they often don't have great security built right in. You have to add it on yourself.
And the third hurdle is provenance. The easiest way to think about this is like a chain of custody for your data. It's the complete history that tells you exactly where the data came from and every single thing that's been done to it along the way. Without good provenance, you just can't trust your results. Simple as that.
So with all these massive challenges, you might be wondering, how does anyone actually get a big data project off the ground? Well, for a whole lot of organizations, the answer is the cloud. It's really become the essential tool that makes all of this possible. So why the cloud? Well, it just solves so many headaches. For starters, you don't need a massive, expensive data center in your basement. You avoid that huge upfront cost. Plus, if your data is already living in the cloud, it just makes sense, right? It gives you all the scalable computing power and storage you could ever need, on demand.
Okay, so we've got the challenges and we've got the key tool. Now it's time to look at the map itself, the big data analytics lifecycle. This is the playbook, the structured, 9-stage process that brings order to all that chaos we talked about.
And there it is, the whole map in one picture. Now, I know, at first glance it might seem a little overwhelming, but trust me, it's just a logical journey, broken down into 9 manageable steps. It's designed to take you all the way from a simple business idea to a real actionable result. Don't worry about memorizing it, we're going to walk through it together.
All right, let's start the journey. To make it a little easier, we're going to break these 9 stages down into 3 main phases. We'll start at the very beginning, how we go from just a question to having the raw materials we need for our analysis. So phase 1 is all about collection and prep. And it starts with what is, without a doubt, the most important step of all, evaluating the business case. You have to know why you're doing this before you write a single line of code. From there, you figure out where the data is, you go get it, you filter out all the junk, and then you extract the good stuff.
And this right here is a perfect example of what extraction actually looks like. You start with that messy, complicated document on the left. The extraction process is like pouring it through a sieve, so only the specific bits you care about, like the user ID and the comments, come out the other side, all nice and organized.
Okay, so we've got our raw materials. Now we move into phase 2, which is all about refinement. This is where you polish that data until it shines. You validate it to make sure it's accurate. You cleanse it to get rid of any errors, and then you aggregate everything together into one big, beautiful data set. And then, finally, in step 7, you get to do the actual analysis.
And analysis itself can mean two very different things. On one path, you have confirmatory analysis. That's where you start with a theory, a hypothesis, like, I bet people who buy coffee also buy donuts. Then you use the data to see if you're right. The other path is exploratory. There, you have no theory at all. You just dive into the data like a treasure hunter, looking for any interesting patterns you can find. So, we've collected the data, we've cleaned it, we've analyzed it. Now for the most critical part of the whole journey, actually turning all that work into something useful. This is where the rubber really meets the road.
And that brings us to our final phase, action and utilization. Step 8, data visualization, is so important. This is where you take your complex findings and turn them into charts and graphs that a normal human being can actually understand. Because let's face it, that's how you communicate what you found. And then in the final step, you put those results to work, solving the business problem you identified way back in step 1.
Ultimately, the grand prize at the end of this whole life cycle is creating a model. Now, a model sounds complicated, but it's just the core insight you've discovered turned into a reusable recipe. It could be a math equation or a set of rules. It's the tangible thing you can plug back into your business to make everything smarter.
So there you have it. From a messy, chaotic pile of raw data to a precise, elegant model that can predict the future or make a process run perfectly. That is the incredible power of the analytics lifecycle. It's a proven method for turning chaos into clarity. Which really just leaves us with one big, exciting question. What's the next model we're going to build?